Hello and welcome to the Wolf Den Podcast, your home for competitive Digimon TCG discussion and news. I'm your host Nako, joined by my co-host Sanitsu. Today, we're going to delve a little bit more into the BT9 metagame, as we actually have some results from a recent tournament. So, I guess just to give Zenitsu an opportunity to speak, why don't you break down the top 16 for us?
Yeah, so the top 16 out of 236 players, 8 rounds, ended up being first place D Reapers, second place X Antibody, third place X
We
Antibody,
should
fourth place
preface
Imperial.
Alphamon. It's Alphamon, X Antibody, because technically
Yeah,
they're
it's
all.
X Antibody Alphamon.
Yeah.
All four of the lists, when I say X Antibody, they're Alphamon.
Mhm.
Um, but fourth place is, or third place is X Antibody Alphamon. Fourth place Imperial. Fifth place, Security Control. Sixth place, Alphamon. Seventh place, Alphamon. Eighth place, Magna, Armor Rush, like Magna X. Then going into top 16, ninth place is Wargrey X. 10th place is Metal Guru X. 11th, Metal Guru X. 12th, another Magna, Magnamon X Antibody, Armor Rush. Then we go to 13th, which is Grandis, 14th, which is another Imperial, uh, 15th, which is Security Control, and the last deck 16th was a Shine Greymon, Yellow Shine Greymon to be more specific.
So, this is our initial spattering of the BT9 metagame and what it looks like as of right now. I think this spread does a good job of at least just dartboarding where I think the decks fall in regards to like what's generally stronger, what's generally better than X, and kind of this kind of shows that in a very limited fashion, but still it does give us something.
Because according to this tournament, the only decks that performed better than X Antibody Alphamon was D Reaper, Imperial, and Security Control. So I don't know where Bellastarmon or how many Bellastarmon players there were, but I think out of the two, people would probably gravitate more towards Security Control, considering, well, you're solely relying on your security to do all of your work, and against OTK decks, it kind of is just a natural theoretical counter. And then Imperial is just one of the faster, more aggressive decks. So it has the ability to beat out a lot of the OTK decks while they're setting up all of their combos and stuff, digging for their parts and pieces. And if they're just a hair slow, Imperial will just beat them out. And then D Reapers is kind of the odd one out. I think D Reapers has a lot of good matchups, but it also has a lot of bad matchups. So it kind of just feels like if you're a D Reaper player, you're just going to be high rolling your opponents more than like your actual gameplay itself.
Yeah. I didn't want to spend too much time on the D Reaper. While it is good that this player has won, and so this is a regional. So this player qualified for nationals um, via this event, and but just the idea that the D Reapers won an event, I feel like I'll reserve my greater judgment for later because we just have a single data point right now. But I do feel as though this is more of a getting lucky with your opponent, as you said, more so than it is getting lucky with your deck. I was We're not aware of this player's matchups and who they played and who they didn't play, but um, the fact that there is a single D Reaper on this list and that not anyone really expected there to be a D Reaper on this list, we may see more if people start to pick it up, um, but I also don't necessarily expect it to hang around for too much longer. It might just kind of be a one and done kind of thing.
I think D Reapers personally has a really bad Alphamon matchup, and if that's the supposed Boogeyman deck, then it does just kind of seem awkward. Um, like it has a lot going for it against some of the other matchups, as I mentioned. Not going to go too nitty gritty into what those matchups are, but I don't know. It is kind of the odd man out. I don't think it's a bad deck. It is basically just an OTK combo deck at the end of the day. And that's kind of what this format kind of is shaping up to be. So it's just the consistency and the speed on which it could do it. And I think the list that won, while it was basically a carbon copy of the Japanese list with one card difference, it proved itself to do well enough in this type of environment.
Yeah. So, I guess looking at the bigger picture here, um, this is generally what I expected the meta to be. I don't think there's anything here that's super surprising if you discount the D Reaper. Um, it's mostly, I guess, mostly being the most frequent X antibody, black X antibody. It's the supposed boogeyman, supposedly the best deck, but it's not the most plentiful deck. Um, at least it's not like over 50% or anything, so that it's still a fairly diverse, honestly, with basically the second place slot being competed with by a number of decks. Everyone having their own unique answer to black X antibody. Um, Imperial having that fourth place doesn't really surprise me too much. Imperial is a deck that when the things line up and the deck can really pop off, I see it beating X antibody genuinely. Like its highest output potential does beat X antibody. It's the consistency and the like getting to that point is the issue as far as beating them consistently. Um, Security control doesn't really surprise me too much because in a meta where there is nothing to interact with and control players, kind of like myself. I mean, I guess I wouldn't want to go that far. Um, but as a control player, what do you do in a meta where you physically cannot interact with anything? You just refuse to interact and you just play security control and you shove lottery tickets into your security and hope that Imperial kills themselves. Um,
The funny thing is, I think like security control, again, kind of like D Reapers, just has some really good matchups against half of the OTK decks. Like if they're not running a delicate plan or are naturally red, then you are kind of high rolling your security because Were Guru doesn't have protection to
Most
like the whole
things.
Garurumon line doesn't
Most
have any
things.
protection. Yeah, most things don't have any protection, let alone all of the protection.
Well, I say
So it's
most.
just
No,
like,
I'm saying where Guru dies to most things. It doesn't
oh
have
yeah,
jamming. It doesn't have cannot be de-reproduced. Like it just dies to most things.
right. And same kind of thing with Grandis. It's like Grandis first check, if you hit Chaos Degradation or something, you're done. Game's over.
I mean, that's assuming that so Grandis will have jamming maybe, but that's kind of it.
Yeah, but
Like,
what Digimon are you kind of running that are actually relevant? Like
um,
for the most part, it's just recovery
yeah,
Digimon that
Grandis is
you're
pretty
using
big.
for Health Scythe.
Grandis is big enough, but I mean, yeah, you can.
Like
Um,
Grandis will naturally just be big enough over virtually anything. I think the strongest thing you would run is probably Death X Spawn, which is 15k. Like you're not running any of the 16k level
I
sevens.
guess I'm just considering your garden variety removal of like destroy X. It doesn't stop that either. It's
Or
you know.
they have to splash hero in a delicate plan, and now we are playing a slightly safer slash worse version of the deck.
Hmm. I think the deck already has enough consistency issues comparatively to warrant not running that. But did the one list that topped have one? I actually I didn't check.
For
Oh, it did. Yep,
Grandis,
it ran delicate plan. So it's there. It's an option because
yeah, because like
otherwise
heroes
Grandis
cracked.
just kind of just die. That's a problem, right? Like,
Yeah. Oh, they're also running the Mimi. Okay.
mhm. uh,
So they reduced the okay. I'm seeing where they like made some reserved cuts in terms of their list to fit in the tech cards. So
mhm.
I don't disagree with any of the decisions that were made in this list.
So, then you move down a little bit, and so I guess I would say Imperial, Setcon, and Melga X are the three decks that are like decidedly, arguably second place right now. Um, I guess
I would I would agree with that.
Imperial is stretching more. Imperial is more inclined to be not the second best deck than more inclined to be the second best. So like, if I had to rank them, it would probably be like Melga X, Security Control, then Imperial in that order. But they're all up there. They're competing for those top spots in the meta, as they all have at least like you can't explain away the deck that they are playing by just saying de-digivolve, except for Melga X kind of. But um, so at least they have their own game plan that doesn't necessarily need um, X anybody to do something wrong to win the game, as opposed to some of the other deck lists that kind of have to rely on that. I'm just gonna double check because it's a trend I noticed because I actually did put together my um, Magna X list, 3, and the other Imperial, 2. Okay, interesting. Um, so we move down uh, to Magna X, and Magna X is just on the fringe. I think Magna X overtakes Imperial in the long run. That's just a guess. That's a feeling. Um, because
I think depending on like how people take to the meta, that could very easily be true. They're playing with some very similar like style of tools. It's just Magna X is obviously a little bit more built-in defensive, while still having some like absolutely ballistic early game aggression.
yeah, I mean the big takeaway of the token aggro decks like Magna X is the evolution of Armor Rush. Um, it's just Armor Rush with a couple pieces swapped out. Um, the Armor Rush style of deck that was absolutely like laughed at in BT8 because of yellow hybrid, blue hybrid even, green that's running Rapidmon, like the removal of Rapidmon from the meta, the removal of DP minus from the meta, pretty much because they killed yellow hybrid, um, has moved armors into a competitive standpoint, competitive place.
I mean, I think they were always kind of competitive, but like definitely without the DP minus running as much rampant, I
Mm.
think it's in a way better position. Way better.
And it is at the end of the day an aggro deck that can punch pretty hard, and you can reliably uh, sec plus one your armors and have them live through those checks, at least in their armor purged form. Because the big um, meta relevant threats, your non-security control, as far as decks that you're actually going to be swinging into and checking multiple times, run a lot of tamers, a lot of options, and like options that don't necessarily kill things.
I'm just saying if Magna X is actually an armor type Digimon. I
He
don't
is.
he is?
Yeah.
Stage level Mega. No, he's not.
Oh, okay. That's what I don't
Yeah,
know what you
because
meant.
stage level is armor form, so he is actually not an armor Digimon, which is interesting. But anyway, I was just like, wait a second, is he actually an armor?
I mean, no, but that's more lore. That has nothing to do with the card game. He's still an armor Digimon in the game. He effectively has armor purge. He doesn't have true armor purge, but he has, you know, kind of better armor purge.
I mean,
Um,
yeah, but anyway,
so
just a little sidetracked. I was just like, hold up, I thought I saw something
I
different.
bring up Magna X mostly because as I said, I do think Magna X passes Imperial as the aggro deck, the premier aggro deck of the format, minus Melga X, which is a pseudo aggro deck. Um, and Um, but what Magna X does is something that I thought was fairly interesting. Both lists, they're slightly different. They don't necessarily agree on the best execution of certain things. Their biggest difference being um, one list runs one copy of Ice Wall and 3 copies of Hammer Spark and one Blue Mem Boost. The other list runs one Ice Wall, 4 Blue Mem Boost, no Hammer Sparks. Basically just saying that the memory on my turn um, via Blue Mem Boost, either through Tripped into Security or the consistency of playing Blue Mem Boost, means more to me for this player than the either Security Bomb of +2 memory or the on my turn gain 1 memory. Probably just because 1 memory isn't enough for this deck to like usually do anything, whereas 2 memory always gets you something. Um, Having it be known that the quote unquote better list, the deck that performed what eighth, yeah, eighth, as opposed to the list that performed 12th, 11th, um, did go for the blue mems over the hammer sparks. I don't know if it makes that much of a difference. I would a lot more goes into a someone's tournament placing than a single copy of a single card. But they both run 4 copies of Megadeth. So I guess a key facet moving forward for this meta outside of D Reaper is you are either OTK or you are a lottery deck. And there's not necessarily anything wrong with being a lottery deck. I myself, as I said, have like just assembled in paper because I'm moving down my list of things I wanted to put together and things I wanted to build. Um, my armor deck and 4 copies of Megadeth is felt. It feels relevant. Um, and especially as playing into it as Alphamon, my Boogeyman deck, um, I I trip Megadeth a non-insignificant amount of times. You know.
Oh, even just last format, during my last event, the opponent I was playing with, he ran 4 Megadeths, and every single game in that best of 3, I tripped Megadeth at least once, if not twice sometimes, and it lost me the game. Like, it hard lost me the game. And I was just like, well, I guess security threats and running 4 Megadeth is the answer, and that's just translating
Hmm.
now into BT9, especially with all of the OTK decks. um so like it's showing that security threats are relevant, which is why like the hammer sparks is like a decent inclusion. It's just like, okay, it's nice to have that extra memory. He's running a little bit more tamers. He's running one extra Davis and Ken than the other one, going from like 3 to 4,
Hmm.
but just for extra memory generation. But it just goes to show that your security is going to matter quite a lot
I
in
think
this
it's
format.
it's mostly for the unsuspending. You wanna because you wanna have a Davis and Ken to re-swing with an armor.
Yes, and make sure that you can. So like both both lists obviously did very well in the event, and I do think that going forward, we'll probably end up seeing less Imperial and more armor, just because they're fulfilling that same type of aggro style of gameplay. And I think armor, like if I were to just in a tournament run Imperial, I do lose to Armor Rush.
Hmm.
It is just a faster, more aggressive deck.
Yeah, without yellow to beat armor down, it's at least in a viable spot. More so. So I guess the other deck that would be in a similar place to Magda X, like the other viable alternative to um, the deck replacing Imperial as its like more prevalent meta deck, is Wargrey X. It is one Wargrey X player. Got ninth place. Um, and
Yeah, he
there's
got
nothing
ninth place.
super crazy about this list. I mean, it's running what I would imagine a list would run. Um, it's just kind of what Jesmon wanted to do if Jesmon had 3 sets of Jesmon support with less bad cards you have to run.
I mean, I think the Greymon X line, like I almost hate to say that it builds itself, but it kind of does just build itself for the most part. You just play your best Greymons, which there's not an exuberant amount of. Like you have some alternative ones, more so on the Metal Gray slots than the actual Greymon slots, because like, come on, is there actually going to be a better Greymon than the starter deck Greymon that gives Security Tech Plus, and the one that makes himself potentially cost 1 to Evo and then plus 2000? Like there is no better combination of those, which just makes running not war great Greymon X just the easiest level 4 to slot in. All of your rookies are going to be Agumons anyway, so again, Agumon X just naturally fits in. um and then you're just going to choose whatever Metal Greymon you feel like you want to run, and then just run Metal Gray X in Sagittarius mode.
Hmm.
um I do think the BT1 Wargray is really good this format because of all of the security threats. But it is a more high rolly OTK deck because you need to see very specific parts and pieces, and your searching and digging isn't going to be as efficient as blue, which is why I think it performed as well as it did. But the blue decks, the Metal Gurumon X, did end up overtaking. Did it overtake both of them? It no, they actually performed slightly worse,
Yep.
but there was more of them.
Yeah. Actually, that's not true. Both Melga X's did worse. Yeah.
Yeah,
Technically.
in the other slots. I mean, they had the same record, so
Yeah.
it's just it at that point it's just tiebreakers. Like,
Our opponent win percentage.
right.
But so so yeah, like the list does kind. I mean, I would say that it doesn't exactly build itself because there are just significantly more Agumons and Greymons than there were other pieces. It being like Agumon, the like basically Pikachu. Um, and so you're running four of the promo, which makes sense. Two of the starter seven to give it 2000 DP win. So I mean that's to give
Yeah,
yourself
it's just
pseudo
more
jamming,
copies of the
so you don't
promo.
die
Yeah,
to like just big things in security. Um, but you
four of
also
the searchers,
yeah searchers.
and
Um,
then four X's, which also search.
yeah. Um, where? Which? Oh no, that's yeah. I'm not gonna talk about every card. I'm not crazy. I'm just going over relevant cards. Um,
I think
and
the
then
most relevant card is the fact that they're using Metal Greymon, the BT8 one that's red and black. Most of the time, they would probably elect to use a different Metal Greymon because the inheritable of attacking into the opponent's Digimon really doesn't seem like it's that relevant. But I guess the de-digivolve and removal is relevant.
yeah, it's definitely niche, and that's why they're only running two of them. But I'm glad that it's included. Um, I guess I was just more gonna bring up just the actual Greymon X antibody. Um, having its inheritable effect being a slightly better version of the blue version, where I think for the first time in Red and Blue's history, Red gets the better version. Um, when this Digimon has Greymon or Omnimon, I don't know if the other one mentions Omnimon, but uh, if it would be deleted or returned to your hand or deck, so it stops Megadeth relevant. Um,
It stops basically most options except for DP reduction and
yeah.
de-digivolve, and that's it.
So, and the actual War Greymon usually stops that portion when because he has delicate plan on his stick.
Well, half the time you're actually just using that War Greymon for the security attack plus, but like the benefit of the deck is if you don't have War Grey X, then yes, you are swinging 100% with War Greymon just because X, like digivolving into X mid combat or post combat or whatever, actually doesn't increase your damage output.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like it actually just doesn't matter. The more spicier thing is going from Wargray X into Omnimon X, or just like using Wargray that security tech to carry over into Blitz Omni, and then
Hmm.
going from Blitz Omni to Omni X. Like that's the real spice.
If you have enough memory to digivolve into Blitz Omni and not pass turn, yeah. Um,
Well, if you have X Antibody, the option underneath, then you could digivolve mid combat,
um,
and that's like how you use it to cheese out.
regular Omni. Well, that's what I
Yeah,
mean. So you can't digivolve into regular Omni with the option card though.
yeah, you can.
This Digimon can
Oh, not
digivolve
not into
in.
regular Omni. No, you could
Yeah,
digivolve into X.
but yeah. So you'd still have to have the four memory to digivolve into Blitz Omni, not pass turn.
That's very easily doable. Like tie puts you to three.
Eh,
Digivolve
actually, that
from
might
level
not even be
five.
true either because it is a when attacking. So the Omnimon would be the one attacking.
Yeah.
So you then use the effect to digivolve into X. That's fair. So,
The point is like X, like Omnimon X, actually is another card to shut off most other OTK decks that's not named Alphamon.
yep. Yeah, unfortunately, Digivolve does ruin that entire plan very easily, and the rare Alphamon's actually really gross. Just so gross when it comes to, like, trying to find solutions to this format. Um, yeah, and then just some consistency tools and some tamers. Nothing else too crazy there. Um, yeah, the grandest I guess isn't running. I guess like Metal Melga X we mentioned. We didn't really go over their lists, but they're not running anything crazy. Nothing like super noteworthy here. I feel like Melga X is more of a solved list than the others are.
Um, yes, just because the most important card in the entire deck is the promo, because that's where
Promos,
all of your damage. Yeah, that's where all of your damage output is.
multiple
And
promos.
your draw engine as well.
Yeah, you just
So
rely more on the X antibody option card than the X or the War Grey does because you're not swinging as many times.
that, and you need to be in bigger bodies half the time to ensure your survival, because like the Weregur or the Garurumon X antibody, the contrast difference to the red variant, the red protects you basically from options, the blue variant protects you from combat. So like it's your pseudo jamming, which isn't bad, it's just not as good as like, oh, there's actually like a Gaia Force in my opponent's security. I guess I just lose versus like, oh, I guess I have jamming. Cool.
Yeah. Um, the Shine Grey list isn't anything special actually. I mean, it's interesting that a Shine Grey list topped, but as far as like super nothing about this is like on I guess the only thing that's like noteworthy for anyone listening at home would be that they're running the TK and Izzy, the yellow green tamer, for just additional ways to gain memory, but they are not running any green options, which would be pretty cool if they were, but they're not. So they're
I mean,
just
the only removal option you need is Sunrise Buster. That card is so good.
yeah, if you care about actually um, killing things, but you don't because Alphamon can't be DP minus.
Well, I mean, even if you kill like a small thing, it's still some form of removal, and the fact that most of your tamers cost 4 and this costs 5
hmm
is it's like, oh, free removal and a tamer on the field all in one. It's just good. And it's a good security threat too. Like again, yes, against Alphamon because that deck is overtuned compared to every other OTK based deck, which this deck is not an OTK based deck. It is relevant. But I think that Shine could be very good. He's not leaning super heavy into the yellow hybrid aspect still, even though Jet Sylphie did get hit down to 1, which he is still playing, and he's running just the Kazes. Like I would think that he would still just want to run um the Zephyrs, but he's actually electing to run blockers instead. So 2 Pedomons and 2 Unimons.
Hmm.
Which again, if you just have a wide field of blockers, then it makes it harder for the opponent to OTK you, I guess. That might be the logic there.
So I guess dialing back to where we left off last episode with just our overview, we started with the top down. Um, Notably absent from this list, as mentioned before, is Bielstar. Um, and I think that leans more into just kind of player philosophy and how players choose which decks they want to run when they come to an event. Because I think anyone that would be interested in playing a control deck, which Bielstar is like the premier control deck of the format, they might as well just kind of sign the pack with the dark side and just go full circle and just become security control.
I think the big difference is Beelstar, while it can't recover, has a better early game like aggression versus security control, where it literally, if you don't have your early game aggro tools, you just are literally functionally doing nothing. You're just sitting there trying to amass some form of security threats in your security, hoping and praying they're all there in the particular order you want, um, until you get some cards to be able to start chipping at the opponent.
Well,
Where Bellastar just can go right away for the chip, and they want their Digimon to die. Even though that's not going to happen all the time, they are still dealing damage, trying to progress the board state in their favor. to try to sneak in a win.
So something I've kind of really like come back to, as far as like control decks, to my um why I like control decks, I guess is a rephrase. It usually stems from allowing yourself to additional avenues to outplay your opponent, or at least allowing additional avenues for you to show expression of skill. Now, um, this card game doesn't offer too many of those. Um, A, there is no inner turn interaction at all. So, if once my turn ends, I can get up and leave the table for all intents and purposes, and as long as someone else is there to flip over the security cards for me, I don't need to be there. And then I can just return and look at the board state after I'm done using the bathroom and continue playing from there. Something you can't do in a lot of other card games. Um, and the other aspect is that I guess as I've learned recently, um, you're entirely open to the knowledge that you have received at hand, and you're allowed to write anything down competitively, which is kind of rough. Again, I still haven't. I've never done that, but it's always in my mind been a backseat option. But I guess it's not. But this entire, I guess, line just in reference to knowledge of your position, just knowing exactly how close to victory or defeat you are more accurately than your opponent is something that I value as a control player. And TK Takashi, the Yellow Tamer, is basically the only way you can do that. Except for the singular black promo card that's recent in Japan, and it allows you to flip one of your opponent's security and look at it. One but so just the fact that as a yellow player you consistently know what your security is, um, matters to me and matters in a lot of games. And it does kind of lean into why security control is seeing more play and is performing better, more so than the actual like physical interactions of the decks themselves. BL is a purple deck. You cannot run TK. You have no idea what your security is. You're a deck that relies on security bombs that can functionally be left in the dark as to the actual success. You could, as a security control player, it is, I mean, not super common, but not uncommon that you flip security like, oh god, I'm playing into Alphamon and the only thing I have in security is Wyvern's Breath. That's functionally irrelevant. I need to fix that. Or at least you know you're about to lose. And you could play to that. Whereas as BL you have no idea if there's just Digimon up there and you've already lost and you have no idea.
I mean, yes. Also, compared to BL Star, it runs way more options. Because literally, a good commonality between both lists is they're both literally just running the only level 5 is Magna Angemon as the only actual way to hard slam a card and recover. Outside of that, both of their rookies is they're running 4 copies of the BT2 Salamon.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the deck that got top A,
The higher
yeah,
placed
the,
one.
the the higher place one was running more Digimon. So it was running promo Patamon for some extra recovery, and then it was running Salamon X for again more extra recovery. Outside of that, they were almost pretty even on like what they were trying to do. Uh, Level 6 wise, they were both just trying to fill up their trash with options, and then hard slam Magna or not Magna, Avenge Kidmon, which does also impact Beelstar's overall success because if they are faced up, then they're at a huge disadvantage because Avenge Kidmon can then take advantage of their trash as well. Um,
And their Digimon.
and their Digimon. Yeah, they were both running Junomons to be able to recycle their Death X's or kind of just whatever they feel like they needed, because they could also recycle the Avenge Kidmon.
Mm.
Then you have your suite of like just good removal. Wyvern's Breath, Hell Scythe, Chaos Dag, Eden's Javelin, um, Reinforced Memory Boost to try to set
Yeah.
everything up.
I mean,
Those are all just staples. And
security
then they
control
were
is
just
kind of
running,
security control. Like they're not running
yeah.
anything super unique. The I guess the interesting point here is, um, the differences between BL and Security Control like are most notable when you count cards that impact Alphamon. I understand Alphamon isn't the only thing in this format, but at the same time, that's where I start from because if you can't beat the most common deck, you're not going to win as commonly as you could otherwise. So,
And if you
Flaming
could
Hell
beat
Scythe,
that, then yeah, and if you could at least beat Alphamon, then you have a good shot of being every other OTK deck that's just significantly worse than Alphamon.
so Holy Wave, uh, outside of Congo. Now, see, this is also why they run Congo, um, because Congo shores up a singular weakness that the Alphamon package has. But so minus Congo, Holy Wave counts. 4 copies of Holy Wave ruins their lethal math. They now may lose where otherwise they would win. Eden's Javelin just cycles you a card. It doesn't actually do anything outside of that, but it's a +1 card from security, which isn't irrelevant, at least in the Alphamon matchup. If they swing at you and they give you a couple cards because there happen to be Edens there, that's not the end of the world. Reinforce only matters if you don't lose, so not really. Wyverns is irrelevant. Schwartz is irrelevant. Flame Health Scythe isn't irrelevant because you could always Health Scythe back a Magna, which does recover you a card, so it's functionally additional copies of Holy Wave with extra steps. Chaos Deg matters because putting Alphabon in security is one of the few weaknesses it actually has. Darkness Wave, if you have a yellow, no,
Darkness Wave is
doesn't
just to
matter.
try to get back Junomon to get back other cards or Death Exmon or Magna.
Hmm.
You're mostly just using it just to try to help Turbo Mill to make Avenge Kidmon playable earlier
Hmm.
while recycling.
Holy Wave 100% matters, especially in a deck that reswings. And it matters significantly more in certain matchups, but as I hadn't really been a big fan of Holy Wave prior to this format, it is 100% a better card now that we do care about OTK, and that fucks with their lethal math. I guess doubly so if they feel the need to restand. Um, so that being said, the only thing that's an actual like dead card in the Alphamon matchup is Wyverns. Like Eden's is kind of dead. Wyverns and
Eden's always
Reinforce.
draws it, but yeah.
It still draws you a card, but that doesn't matter if you lose. Schwartz is dead. Darkness Wave doesn't kill anything. I'm talking about things that kill from security. Um, and then now they need Congo, which now you're asking for an unsearchable piece, and not and that's really the crux. If you're asking for them to have an unsearchable piece, so they don't have chaos. If they don't have Congo, they can hit Holy Wave, they can hit Chaos Egg, they can hit Flame Hell Scythe. Those cards matter, and if they have Congo, that they have Congo, but that is way less likely to happen than anything else because everything in that deck is searchable by every card except Congo.
And some of the tamers like Cool Boy, but I digress.
I guess yeah, but you're not cycling Cool Boy. Like you don't care that much. Um, but yeah, like Cool Boy pulls any card that you care about for your combo. Um, Coda pulls any card you care about. Any of the rookies pull anything you care about. They all pull combo pieces and they're completely agnostic of each other. Like none of them care. None of them can whiff on if I only need the level 7. Any one of them is works because even Mem Boost, which traditionally level 7s aren't on color, they're white or something like that. But Alpha Oryukin being a black Digimon, yep, Mem Boost can hit it too. Mem Boost hits everything. Like you might as well just run 4 of them. So I guess that's just where we're at, right? Like, you're either playing X Antibody, you're playing something to beat X Antibody in your own unique way via either Security Control, Imperial, Magna, or Wargrey. Grandis, I guess, because Grandis is still green, which I feel like is normally a negative thing. It's decidedly the most competitive green's been for a while, but I think the fact that they need to kind of see Hero and see Delicate Plan, both of which are unsearchable, hampers the deck's consistency and really makes it so that you have to get kind of really lucky to do well with this deck.
Well, in green's anti-defense, green has almost no card draw at all, like period.
Yeah,
Like it's just green memory boost. Their tamers don't draw you cards. Like they're solely relying on evolution to
everything's a
draw you
-1.
cards.
Yeah,
So like it's that's why I'm like I think green has some really high highs, but like it's just one of the worst of the good OTK decks. Like if that makes any sense to anybody.
mm. The only thing that
Because
I
like
guess it
at least
really
with
has.
red it searches, at least with blue it draws and searches. Green just has nothing.
Well, what are you drawing with that's blue outside of Digivolution?
Um, you could tech in. This is something I was actually thinking of. You could tech in Drabumon, um, the BT1 Gabumon to literally just hard play, draw you a card. Because like the philosophy is, if you're gonna have pseudo jamming anyway, obviously you want to have a higher DP. That does matter. So that way you have an easier time living through those securities, so you don't trigger the ability to lose your sources. But if you're just still a combo based deck looking for your parts and pieces, BT1 Gabumon helps you draw at the very least. It's doing almost the exact same thing as the brand new Dorumon.
It's not though,
I know
because
it's not, but like it's the functional replacement to having better
I
consistency
mean,
versus the other
it's
OTK
it's
decks.
such a small change, but I mean, I can't stress enough that like I'm not super happy with exactly where we are right now with Alphamon, but this is such like a like honeymoon deck that so many things are going right for it at the same time. So your direct comparison, like, because I love making these direct comparisons when people try and argue that other things aren't as bad or other things aren't as good, because I feel like it really stresses the differences in the deck. Okay, you are playing blue. You're like, ah man, I have an extra rookie and I need to play it because I have my whatever in raising already, and so I'm not just going to cycle it for draw for raising. I have to play it. I play it for 3, and I draw a card. Okay, that is it. You've replaced the one card in your hand for 3 memory. The X-Antibody Dorumon that you just referenced, the BT9 one, on plays for the same amount, 3. The same situation. Oh man, I already made in raising. I'm still missing pieces, and this is the least. Usually you get on the checklist of like most efficient searchers to least efficient searchers. It's one of the worst in the deck, and you still play for 3. Discard a card. Not a negative in this deck. You want very specific things in your trash, or a Umon specifically because if you have the rare alpha, you can digivolve. You can tuck sources from trash, and you're basically plussing because you wanted that to be in the trash anyway. Thank God I get to put it in the trash right now and don't have to worry about it. And I draw 2 new cards. So I'm losing 2 cards that I don't want, and I'm gaining 2 cards that I may potentially want again for that same 3 memory. It's just a +1. It is one
Well, I
card
mean,
better.
that's why I said like every other OTK deck is just a worse version of Alphamon because Alphamon just has the better search tools and digging tools. I'm just saying, like in Blue's defense compared to the other OTK decks that aren't Alphamon, it has the second most highest level of consistency. Davis draws you cards, Gabumon searches,
Yeah.
Gabumon also can draw you cards, Blue Memory Boost is still getting cards. Like you have functionally similar cards, even if they are worse. You're still better off than most of the other OTK based decks when looking for your combo pieces.
Mhm. So, no, that's really um just, I mean, even looking at green, just because I don't really think we talked a whole lot about green last time. So I'm just going to use the only one we have, um, the only top grandest list. 2 copies of Argomon. Um, there's no Digisorption here. I guess it's just cheap way to pass the turn because they back.
Yeah, it's a cheap way to pass the turn and start evoing into a second stack just for card draw because like they don't have searchers. Like you have 4 copies of Kokuamon.
And that's it.
That
That's all
helps you
you've
look
got.
for your X antibodies and insects.
Yep.
and then you have green mem boost, and then that's literally it. So you need to do something to try to draw cards, and a cheap setup helps you at least accomplish that.
4 copies of Terramon for memory blocker. Um, Not irrelevant, honestly, because it doesn't matter. It cannot get digivolved. Um, and outside of exclusively Dex Doru Gray, it lives. Like it actively prevents your opponent from doing something. Um, which out like Dex Doru Gray is the least relevant piece that they run, and oftentimes is the first one that is chosen as, oh, I don't need that. I'm going. I'm ending the game now because you don't need it. You just don't need it. Um so but if they don't have it now, if they don't have it and you have something else on board so that it isn't killed by the Oryuken when digivolving effect, it fucks them. It fucks them real hard. So 4 copies is right. Um 4 copies of the Searcher, as you mentioned, like again, just I, I guess for those that are aware, like I'm beating the crap out of a dead horse, but when digivolving or on play for 3 memory, I mean not when digivolve for 0, but top 3 cards, only seeing 3, add an insect or machine and an X antibody. So that first trait can pull none of the other rookies. Step 1. So if you're digivolving, you just see no other rookie, which I guess what you kind of want because you already have a rookie and none of the other rookies are searchers, but you're whiffing there. Um, you hit Roachmon, you miss Weedmon and Arbormon, and you hit Kabuterimon. So you hit 5 of your 11 level 4s. That's not great odds. You hit all of your level 5s and all of your level 6s. So you're just not hitting your low end at all with that search. And it's also something that's so like actually never mind. You're never getting that when digivolving because you're not running regular Kokuamon. You're only getting that if you play it.
Yeah, you're hard playing it all the
So
time.
that's just a choice then. I mean, I kind of came to my
I've
own
seen
conclusion,
some
but
lists run it, but the one memory to Evo in raising just to move it out and get this effect is just it's not worth it. It really isn't.
mm.
But
Well,
like that just goes to show like in the results that like even though Grandis made top 16, um it is just the worst of the best OTK decks because it doesn't have that consistency. Like the funny thing is I actually think red ancient OTK is more consistent than this.
mm,
And,
honestly,
and you
probably.
don't even need to run a delicate plan.
Yeah, yeah, honestly. Um, yeah, you're basically just because you have no way of searching out your, but outside of the 3 copies of, you just kind of have to see them, or you just go with whatever you have, not necessarily caring about specific stacks. Um, and you
Oh,
just
you
want
care about specific
and
stacks.
just getting
Like
delicate
I mean,
plan.
yeah, I mean, like you do and you don't care about specific stacks because like you're getting rid of all of your cards
Well, you're
anyway.
not running
So
as
out of
many like name specific Digimon. So, what is an ideal Grandis stack? Okay, it'd be any level 3, specifically Jamming Palmon, technically. So,
yeah,
Jamming
it would be
Palmon,
Jamming Pamon, Weedmon, followed by both
Oku,
of your
yeah,
Okuas.
both
So
Akua,
Okua X, and then
Grandis,
Grand
or Grand
Kawagamon.
Kawaga, then Grandis. So,
Yeah,
but that's, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's a 6 cards, right? But
I mean, but yeah, it
it
is
doesn't
kind of
have to
stack
be
agnostic.
exactly those.
Yeah, it is kind of stack agnostic because Weedmon just gives you a memory. Otherwise, like it's just any other Digimon where
hmm
you just pitch it and you're
Otherwise,
good
who
to
cares?
go.
Yeah. I mean, if anything, the only thing you kind of don't want is Arbormon because everything evos for 1, and
Yeah,
Arbormon's there for
Arbamon just
tamer
seems
lethal.
yeah.
So um that's there. So
Because if there's Digimon on the field, this is a big if. Um, that's where Okuamon's ability really starts kicking in. And Okuamon's ability also against decks that like to multi-attack like a lot. Also could really mess up with their attack math.
I mean, it
So like there's stuff going for the deck. It's just again in my perspective the worst of the good OTK decks.
yeah. Having to see both an Okua and an Okua X and a Grand Kawaga and a Grandis, like being effectively a level 7,
With
like
almost no searching.
with yeah, you just kind of have to see it either via your memory boost or just drawing, just digivolving and drawing because you have no outside draw. I don't think there's a single +1 in this deck. Actually, no,
No,
It's
there's
Kokuamon
not.
X antibody, and it's
Yeah,
only if you
Kokuma.
hit an X antibody and an insect. So yeah, that's rough. Um, what else didn't we talk about last week? War Gray, I guess. We didn't really talk about.
No,
We
I
kind of
mean
talked about it a
Wargray's in
little bit.
here. We didn't Black War Gray. He is absent. I thought Black War Gray would have a better first initial showing in the fact that he's basically non-existent, at least in the top 16. Um, is kind of showing that like Tamer Hate is good, but like maybe people are trying to run the red variant, or maybe the black variant just needs more time in the oven to figure out how to counteract some of these strategies. Because like some of them, the Tamers don't really matter. Some of them, the Tamers are actually kind of important. So like I think Black War Gray is probably the best rogue deck, just because it's one of the few decks that actually has Tamer interaction. Mastimon is absent, but I think Mastimon has its own set of consistency issues. And in a
I think
format
deck
where
building
accidentally
issues
giving
too.
too much memory, yeah, and in a format where accidentally giving the opponent too much memory is probably a death sentence.
I think Mastimon's ability just isn't as relevant as it used to be because, like, I mean, just reading Mastamon as a card, like, right? So the idea being that you would slam a Gatomon past turn, like search, and then the following turn Digivolve over the Gatomon for minimal cost, one preferably, and then slam something else and end of turn Jogress into um, Masty just doesn't do anything in this format because A,
And getting the Lucimon out to kill a Tamer, while that's novel, it's just like if that's your goal, you were just better off playing Black War Gray to begin with.
yeah, you could just Digivolve for 4 and kill that same Tamer. Most likely, not always, but usually, as long as it's on a 4-cost Tamer, which they run fewer of. But, um, yeah, just the idea that, yeah, Masty also did tend to hand over a lot of memory, uh, just kind of a death sentence because Alphamon at least can kind of YOLO through its pieces a little bit if it has the memory to do so.
Yeah,
Um, I mean, so blue and yellow hybrid are not here. Still probably like people workshopping those lists if they want to play
I
them at
think
all.
your list, yeah, I think your list for yellow hybrids using the rise package to be like aggressive, and then you just literally do the same classic thing of just hybrid swing is still very good. I don't know if people caught on to that yet,
I don't know
but
how I've only played against your Alphamon, so I haven't played
I
against
got better on
Alphamon.
Alphamon. I didn't really tweak the deck a whole lot. I tweaked it a little bit, but I played it at
Oh,
locals. Um, and I am getting better on search optimization because I think that's the big part I struggle with. Um,
it's
but
not
I
really
do
so
think,
it really isn't like it is and isn't because I remember like there was even a game where you even had said like you searched once and I was like, yeah, you're right. Like um it isn't necessarily entirely search optimization. It is more so just having the flexibility to run and really knowing exactly it's more so maybe like a skill in gambling, right? Like knowing when to pull the trigger like okay, if I push out now with the amount of memory I have and how many pieces I have and how many pieces I need, what is my actual likelihood? Because like just running some test hands the other day, I had an opportunity where I needed six, five, six, seven. I needed 5, 6, 7, and I flipped 7-3-5-5, and I was like, well, shit. Like, I only run 3 7s, but I've also be tucking 2 of my 4 5s. Like, which is better here? I don't fucking know. Like, that's rough. So I took a 5 because at least I know. I guess in both situations there were 2 more pieces in the deck, but the 7's not as necessary as the 5 is. Obviously, you can kind of end the game with just the 6 if you get lucky enough a little bit. So, I kept going. If anything, I want to see more 5s too. I never want to see 2 7s, but I always want to see more 5s. And just, that kind of thing. That was one search. And then um, something else that I picked up on too, just has kind of quote unquote saved me in my test hands, has been that if you're missing um, the if you have not had an opportunity to discard the Oryu because you maybe um, either found it later on in your cycle, like you started your push before you had the Oryu in hand, so you couldn't discard it for your Dexdoru or your Dexterugomon or your Dexdoru Gray, but usually you're only kind of Dexdoru, Dexterugomon, the Dexdoru Gray. I only run 2 of. Um, and so if you're not discarding it for that, then you have no other opportunity to discard it, and it needs to be in the trash to Digivolve or to tuck the source from trash. Um, that's where Yuji comes into play, and you can just fucking swing and then tuck with Yuji, which is just so helpful.
You do realize that the Alphamon isn't strictly from the trash,
Is
right?
it not? Ah, damn. See, I gotta read cards.
From Oh wait,
Rare Alpha?
from your trash. No, it is.
Okay,
Yeah, rare
I was gonna
Alphamon is
say
from your
that
trash.
was supposed to be its like keeping it in line. It accidentally made it better. That was like I think the reason it was printed at rare instead of super rare is that it was supposed to be worse
I mean, you're just gonna use Yuji to fix it anyway.
if you have one. But yeah, Yuji being one of the few cards that you play that doesn't give you a card immediately back. It just gives you
Well, if
one card in a
we
memory later
look,
on.
yeah, just looking at all of the X antibody lists, all of them run Yuji.
How many though? Do
Um,
they all run
the
4?
the second place ran 4, no codas at all.
I saw that actually. I did notice that.
Japanese lists also were running 4 Yujis most of the time. Um, the fourth place, a 2-2 split
2-2-4.
on coda on
So
Yuji.
so if I so outside of I guess just to make a note for cuz I I do kind of
3
deal with
Yuji, 2 coda,
generalities. I think well I guess let me look at the other list before I completely finish my sentence. Are these
and
the same
then
list?
3 Yujis.
They're the same
Um,
list. Um
yeah, and
so
then 3 Yujis. Like the commonality is all of them are running Yuji.
so the second and fifth place one, two, three, four, five, sixth place. So second and sixth place. The middle two X antibody lists are identical, I think. Right? Right? Are they just in
They're
different
very
orders?
similar.
No, they're one card off. Okay. Okay, I agree with the second place more. So, the second place list, I'm sorry, the second of them, so third place list. The third place list is what I would.
Fourth place, but yeah.
Am I still? Damn, I can't count. Um, yeah, Brandon Kim's list. Let's go there. Um, is what I would define as the standard list, the most average list. If you could run every Tekken piece through like a filter and it spit out everything that's the same, this is that list because it kind of hits every benchmark without going too crazy in one direction. Well, so it's kind of like so unteching this list. Um, it runs four of the on play trash, four BT9 Dorus, four BT7 Dorus, and the 3 of the Ryuta. Ryuta is your worst card. Um, so and honestly, outside of it just being a rookie, I usually just don't want to see it. I never want to have to digivolve over anything other than a Doru anyway, but at least if I have 2 copies of the other one, I can get pieces in my trash if I need be. Um, 4 copies of Doru and then 4 copies of Dex Dorugamon are required. If you're not running that, you're wrong. Um, honestly, the one Grumblemon I feel like is kind of required. Just because it gives your
It
deck
helps
an
with
additional
OTK.
avenue. Any more than one is too many, but exactly one. Um,
Well, 'cause the deck can draw like a mother. On
so
its big combo turn, it can draw like no other
that's
deck.
what I mean. Um, 3 Dexdoru Gray is one more than I run, but it's also arguably the correct amount because Dexdoru Gray is additional. It is a zero cost card cycle that kills something because you're always going to have a Doru Gray. So it and like I didn't want to get super deep into it, but I did read about it earlier. I'm gonna bring it up. There was like a conversation on Reddit where people were trying to say that the dexes made the deck worse. I
Oh,
mean,
that was hilarious. I saw that too, where he was arguing that the dexes are bricks, and I'm just like, no, 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 no. You're an OTK deck. Everything in your hand is a brick until you combo off. Um,
eh.
and like the fact that like Cool Boy makes the dexes even better is
And then
like it is the crux of the deck. You are using the dexes to not only increase your stack for or you can when you get there if you're getting there. But it's making it so that you could use all of Cool Boy's abilities, all of them.
yeah,
Um,
let me.
because digivolving for 0 gain 2 memory is cracked on top of drawing extra cards when you digivolve. It's just so good. And then you only need to see one of the dexes, which is the good part. Like obviously the better one is Dex Doru, but if you're forced to play the line without Dex Doru and you still have Dex Doru Gray, then that's still good because you're still getting Cool Boy value.
Hmm. Well, you only get it
But
once, which is why you
right, which is why
usually
you
don't
only need it
care.
once.
You're
Yeah.
always like I would say one of the dexes is required, preferably the level 4 because it's actually free.
Yes.
I'd
But
say.
going over the rest of the list, it's 4 Doru Greys, security tech, source tucking, protection. It's the key card of the deck that's making it insane. Next to the rare Alphamon, usually at 3 of, just because it is literally grabbing the card that you just pitched from your trash, which is going to be your Oreomon more often than not to be able to combo off with. 3 copies of Oreo, that's your combo piece. You're not trying to digivolve up into them. Although
Never.
with the X antibody option card, you can. So that way you could go up into them, swing, and then digivolve into an alpha or you can, and still be able to alpha or you can value.
Yeah, for
Um
7.
so I mean his end of turn ability, you're gaining the memory back.
Not 7. Or 7 is if you pull like everything. I mean, let's literally count. One, two, three, 4, 5, 6. That would be everything. That is the actual best case scenario, and I counted the source you took from Doru Gray.
But
So,
anyway, most of the time you're just going to be pitching it to get it into the trash for Alphamon. Um, and then 3 copies of Alpha Oryukin, just because why not? It's just that good.
yeah.
The removal effect is nice at punishing the opponent. The larger body makes it a bigger security threat
Well,
than most
so
other level 7s.
like, cause I mean, I know we talked about it before, but just like for those that aren't aware or haven't heard it in a while, I guess like I don't think it's been super recently since we've said it. Ratios in Digimon are kind of they're not solved as far as like how many of each card to run per deck. That's very variable and very dependent upon the card and the deck. But something that is kind of established at least or agreed upon is what those numbers mean, and um, it kind of we're in a place where one or two ofs are like your edge case cards that you like don't necessarily need to see every game, but like when you see it in a specific scenario, it's usually a better card than just an additional copy of something else. Your three's a pretty standard number because it's your I want to see at least one every game, but usually no more than one. And then 4 is your I'm running as much as I can. I want to see at least one, every game, if not more, preferably more than one. Which is why these
Yeah,
ratios
so
all make sense. Your 3 rare alpha, your 3 Oryu, and your 3 Oryuken. I want to see exactly one of those every game. I need at least one of each, but I only want to see one. The second copy of each is wasted.
and then as far as the option tech suite, it's going to be one Breath of the Gods, one Congo, just because uh teching for different matchups is a thing. We don't have access to a sideboard, but I digress. They're both really good at just shutting out aggression and adding your overall defensive game plan. Then one X antibody, which I think is like the one kind of out there card. It's really good in some edge
It's the
cases.
techiest of cards because
Yeah,
the
it's
only situation this is relevant is after you've started, like I'm comboing, you tuck X antibody and you can't have your sources trashed.
right. It is probably the worst card in the whole deck, but it's not a bad card by any stretch of the means.
Hmm.
At least in my perspective. Then three black members for the searching and memory fix. You want to at least see one just to continue with the searching. Um, two Kodas, two UGs. They're good tamers, all in
Actually,
all.
wait. So,
And then four cool boys. Which Cool Boy is arguably the best searcher in the whole deck outside of Coda. Um,
are
but like
they?
you get more value off of more Cool Boys than you do more Codas.
You can't use this card.
What? Anybody?
Yeah.
Yes, you can. The
Uh,
card, so putting it underneath itself is referring to the card itself. You can only have one X antibody option card in the stack.
okay. Never mind.
That's what it's
I
referring
was gonna
to.
say, like, if you can't use it on a Digimon that has X antibody, that's fucking all of them. But
No, the whole point is to put it underneath a stack
that
that
doesn't
doesn't
contain
have
this
the
option
option.
card already. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, never mind then.
And then
So,
it's just in there to use for the on attack digivolving. So it allows your in best case scenario, Alphamon with Oriumon underneath to swing and then digivolve mid combat into Alpha Oryuken. So you don't have to like I mean you're diverging the same amount of resources, but it's just making it so your attack initially is safer.
yeah. And then yeah, 3 Memboost, 2 Coda, 2 UG, 4 Cool Boy. That's the
Yeah.
most
It also
correct
triggers
feeling.
the Yeah. It also helps trigger like Dorumon and Dorimon. When you put a card underneath your sources, you gain their card effects. Sometimes you just don't, for whatever reason.
Yeah, without
But it's
UG,
just
well, for Doru Gray, you always tuck something because you need to prevent DP reduction and it from being deleted. If you're not tucking,
yeah,
you've lost the
that's why
game.
I'm saying like it's the worst card in the deck, but it's not a bad card.
Yeah, it's exclusively there for the source protection because, in certain matchups, I guess mostly just like BL Star running Howling Crusher, they can strip your sources and make you irrelevant.
Well, they would strip all of the sources except for X antibody anyway, so it's not like that actually matters.
Do they? Does it?
Yes. Because let me pull up Howling Crusher really
Yeah, I
quickly.
gotta read
Actually,
that
I
card.
have it in front of me.
I was gonna say I haven't read that
So
card ever.
Howling Crusher reads trash all of the Digivolution sources under
Uh,
one of your opponent's Digimon.
I
So
think
it'll trash all of them but the X antibody.
that doesn't. You don't get saved based on like the technicality because so technically it's saying trash all is just a layered action in which you trash from the bottom starting up.
I mean it's just no. Because even from the bottom going up, it still leaks over. So if let's just say you have three sources underneath your Digimon. X Antibody's the bottom one, and it says trash the bottom two. It'll trash. It'll attempt to trash X Antibody, fail to trash X Antibody, and then just go up and leak over into the next one.
Hmm, that's very
So,
specific ruling. I didn't know that exactly.
yeah.
Um,
So like something with a Howling Crusher where it's like trash the bottom two, and X Antibody's the very bottom one. It'll just actually trash one of your Digimon inheritable sources.
hmm. Um,
And then
yeah.
obviously, like with UG, it can also increase the amount of stack that you have on attack as well. So you could increase your stack, like in worst case scenario with Oryukin and X antibody. Just saying. But anyway, it's a good deck. I think this is the best OTK deck that we have in the format, and I think this is the deck to beat going forward because like every other OTK deck is just a worse version of this. It's just trying to dig its parts and pieces, do the whole one big raising thing, um, and it's really just up to the pilot to be able to navigate their searches and search optimization to try to get and find its parts and pieces faster.
Yeah. Um, yeah, this is, I
Which is
guess,
why like the control decks are kind of going to be somewhat popular in terms of like trying to deal with it, or the aggro, because you either have to do one of two things. You either have to accept the fact that they're going to do their OTK and try to figure out how to make your security as stupid as possible so you don't die, um, and then you have the problem of trying to kill them on crackback, or you just beat them in the face before they could get to their combo piece, and that's kind of it. Like those are the three extremes that we're seeing emerge through uh this first result. And I think like right now we're just in the honeymoon phase of like, oh, everything is so great, everything is so diverse. Look at all these top decks. But as we've seen with Digimon history and events, people look at Alphamon performed technically the best out of them all and just, oh, Alphamon performed the best. So let's just continue with the Alphamon hype train. And then it's going to just evolve into Alphamon being 50-60% of the meta by the end of it.
yeah, it's pretty fair. Um,
Because as we saw with the first place, net decking is a thing, and people love net decking and copying each other's decks.
that's nothing new.
That's nothing
No.
new. It's in all TCGs. It's just a thing. It doesn't mean just because you net decked, you'll have that same success as the others. Um, so keep that in mind. Um, because literally the first place D Reaper deck copied the first place Japanese D Reaper from BT10, almost card for card. The only difference is he was running one less Pallades head for one more D Reaper, or one more Reaper, and I think that is correct because you need to see Reaper in order to win the game, especially in this format. So he obviously took and made the smart change, and found his own success.
Almost made it. Almost made it. uh,
I can't let that go. I'm sorry.
it's
But there was
because we
just
literally
as a
like,
little highlight. I know, as a little, also a little other aside. There were some complications with the event as a whole. A lot of players lost their first round because they couldn't get to the venue in time because there was an hour delay because of the lines.
yeah, the line to
Although they
actually
did
enter
send,
the con.
yeah, although they did send out like a warning, make sure you're on time. I believe they did. Not 110% sure, wasn't there, can't say.
They said something about how like there's a long line, and I think they delayed it a little bit. I remember seeing something about that.
Yeah, so some people got round one losses for just literally waiting in line to get into the convention, and then on top of that, the second place did have, in quotation marks, mark sleeves. Don't know the full story and context behind that in terms of like the player as a whole, if he was intentionally trying to cheat or if it was just an honest mistake because this is like his first big event and he just so happened to do well. We have had those cases happen, just because it is an in-person event and usually the competition is supposed to be more fierce, but generally you'll get a lot of local, I don't want to say local hicks, but I'm just going to say local hicks anyway, where it's just like, oh, this is just in my backyard, as the event is in my state, so I might as well just play.
Hmm.
So he just might not have known better, I don't know. um, but those are two stipulations that went into the event. So that, and those stipulations could have actually affected the event, but based on everything that transpired, this is the result that we have, and this is the result that is going to be standing.
Hmm. Um, yeah, so I guess I'm looking back and I'm referencing the list that we had kind of used when we're just like going from the top down, looking at like what's like the good decks, the meta relevant decks. I feel like we've fully covered with a little bit of movement, um, that like S plus A territory. And I know we mentioned like there's less competition in the S. And actually, I mean the list that we were both referencing immediately from Japanese data included Grandis at S, but it's probably a lot closer to A. Um, as far as it's not decidedly S. I think I think if you just swap Melga and Grandis, this is probably a better list. But um, and if we just make Bielstar security control, like it's I wouldn't even say it's an S list though. It's just the only control deck. Um,
I would say it is S because the only real like unless they're teching in a delicate plan if you're every other deck but Alphamon and red, you do just kind of lose. And if you are a smaller deck that's also trying to beat the security fast, then you still also do just kind of lose. So it's in a really precarious position on being probably one of the better decks outside of the fact that it just loses to red, which is prominent, and it loses to Alphamon as long as they have Congo.
yeah. Um, I guess something else I did want to mention quickly before we signed off was just that um, I know I touched on it with the Magna X, but like the other OTK decks kind of just don't run anything to stop themselves from being OTK'd, um, which is potentially a move we'll see because, especially from my internal playtesting, I found that it is that simple. It's not a high likelihood, but it's enough to come up, especially maybe it just wins you a game. Like, I mean, in the most extreme scenario, too, like, they swing Alpha Oriukin, first check, no Congo, hit a Mega Death. They just lose. They do just lose. It is they're technically not out of the game. They technically maybe have things they can do, but 95% of the time they just lose.
Yeah, and I think like that is both a good thing and a bad thing because it makes games quicker and it makes events go faster. But at the same time, like you are putting yourself more at risk, which is why certain decks like the Topping Grandis deck, they felt the liberties to slow down in quotation marks their deck to fit in the delicate plan package. And because of the way Hero works and in and the other duo tamers, so like the red blue duo tamer, Matt and Sora, that's a really good one also. There is just room to be able to fit those in, even though it is just more parts and pieces to make your swing safer. You don't necessarily need them, but they're nice when you have them. And I think that's kind of the sentiment the green Grandis player was like showing off in his deck, where it's just like, look, if I have it, I know I don't need it in specific matchups, and if I do have it against specific matchups, I could probably wait. Like against security control, you probably have enough time
Yeah,
to
you
wait
you
to
wait
find those
for it in
cards.
security control. You kind of have to because you're most
Yeah, but against like something like
alpha.
Alphamon, you don't wait. You
Nope,
just go.
you go because they have they run it like again these average lists. They're running. I mean, I mostly run it just because I don't feel as though the D-Digivolve is always required, and just with the sheer draw of the deck, you are usually seeing two level 6s anyway, two alphas, I guess more specifically. Um, and I do like the one of Secret Alpha because it does just prevent opposing alphas from winning the game.
Yeah, so there's still like room to improve and iterate and change depending on what the meta is asking from us and the problems we're trying to solve, which is always the fun and intricate part of how metas develop is like what are the texts, what are the answers, how are they playing, what are they playing, like those are the fun parts. Um, and that's kind of like why I enjoy doing lots of like deck building and trying to figure out those creative answers.
Yeah,
And we've seen usually in the middle half those answers emerge more. just because they're getting discovered, and because that discovery is that unknown factor for the opponent, it helps propel those decks using those unknown techs to do better and perform better.
Yeah. So this is the beginning of the meta. This is what we're kind of working with moving forward. Um,
I
I,
actually really like the spread of the top 16. I think this is a
it's
fantastic spread.
I like that it is not all alpha immediately. I still think we're gonna get there, and I still think by mid to late, or maybe not to late, because I think people get sick of playing nothing but alpha mirrors, and then start playing something new right before BT10. But um, I think like the bulk of our competitive meta will still be just alpha mirrors. Unfortunately, but it is just that kind of deck.
Well, we also have the Japanese ban and restriction announcement that might hit some
I don't think
BT9
it touches
cards.
anything. I don't think it touches anything competitively relevant from BT9. Let me say that.
We don't
Unless,
know.
yeah, yeah, we have no idea.
We don't
I
know.
actually do have a couple ideas of things they could hit because Alpha is technically potentially already in that bucket of their two sets in the future, and it's the only thing like Black is playing still. It's just kind of entering Jesmon Yellow Hybrid territory where they're like, okay, move
Well,
on or I'll ban it.
Black also plays with Commandramon. That is unfortunately and unironically slash ironically the second best Black deck is Commandramon. Just let that sink in.
Yep. So, okay, with that,
Uh,
I think we'll close it out.
and goodbye.
Goodbye.